Good morning, or in some cases good evening, to all of you, fellow Essendon members and supporters. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to speak to you and to introduce myself to you as the new president. It's a great privilege to be a president of our club, and it brings with it an enormous responsibility. And it's a responsibility that I feel to every single one of you as members and fans of this club. I take it really, really seriously. Like you, I have felt disappointment and some frustration during the course of 2020, and I'm absolutely determined that I and we are going to do every single thing in our power to make 2021 a much better and more enjoyable year for all of you. Let me begin though by acknowledging the outgoing President Lindsay Tanner and our outgoing coach John Worsfold. In Lindsay's case, he had no sooner joined the board and taken over the presidency than we managed to lose most of our players through suspension. And I think it's fair to say that nobody who was not present at the club during that time would really understand the strain that put on the club as a whole and the president. Lindsay and Xavier Campbell formed a terrific partnership to help us work through that time. And in Lindsay's case, it was his strength, his physical and mental strength, his love of the club, his absolute resolve to see us through this, and his ability to hold together staff, players, members, all of our various stakeholders that saw us surviving as a club at a time when that survival was by no means assured. So to Lindsay, a huge vote of thanks. Similarly with John Worsfold. You know, John really has been a great person for this club who arrived in our hour of greatest need. How do you think you'd feel being appointed president of a club, coach of a club, and then being told that you would have to coach without having most of your good players available to you? I never once heard John complain. I never once saw him feeling sorry for himself. He just put his head down and got on with it and built the foundation for where we are going to be going forward. His selflessness came out this year in the transition to Ben Rutten, and I think that really is something that's going to stand us in good stead for a long time. I believe that Ben is going to be a terrific AFL coach, and when he is, a lot of the credit for that success is going to rest upon John Worsfold and the way in which he's worked with Ben this year and helped him to move into the role. John has had his critics in relation to his calm style, I know that, and yet it's that very calmness that's allowed us to get to where we are now and to get us through the problems that we had when he arrived at the club. This club owes a huge debt of thanks to Woosha and to his family, and we'll always remember that. So, here we are now, turning a page into a new chapter of the Essendon story. We're entering an incredibly challenging and totally unpredictable time as we hopefully come out of the COVID pandemic. I believe that we are as well placed as we could possibly be in all off-field aspects of the club, and I'm not going to spend time today talking about those. What I will talk about is the thing that I know is the number one priority for all of you, and that is how I see us going forward as a football club in the football department. I mentioned Truck. We've got an enormous opinion of him. We believe he's going to be an outstanding coach, and we are committed to doing every single thing possible to make sure that he grows into a successful coach in the AFL landscape. For my part, to quote Winston Churchill, I've got nothing to offer you except toil, sweat, tears and blood. Hopefully there won't be a lot of blood. I'm sure there'll be quite a lot of tears at different stages. Hopefully some of those are happy tears. But the one thing I guarantee you is that there will be absolutely no limit on the amount of toil and sweat that I will put into this club. I've stepped away from most of my other commitments, and I'll be available to spend whatever time is necessary working with people both inside the club and with those of you on the outside of the club to make this a better place. Like most of you, I'm a passionate, lifelong Bomber supporter. Like you, I've experienced extreme highs and I've experienced devastating lows. in both cases driven by the fluctuating fortunes of our team. The worst day of my life to that point was in 1983, when I was at the MCG to watch us lose to Hawthorn in the grand final by a record 83 points. A year later, we beat them in the grand final, coming from 24 points down at three-quarter time. What a day that was. And then in the next decade, the only time in my life I have ever left a game at half time was in 1992, when we lost again to the Hawks by the best part of 30 goals. 30 goals. At half time, I think we were about 15 goals down. I stormed out in disgust and went down to Bridge Road and got a hamburger. And yet, that was round 20 in 1992. There we were, just over a year later, smashing the hated Blues in the grand final of 1993. The point is that history demonstrates that things are never quite as good or never quite as bad as you might think they are. 2020 has been disappointing, but I'll tell you that despite that, I'm going into 2021 with enormous optimism, and I will talk about that in a moment. But first, I've heard a few people say that the club has become too passive, both on the field and off the field, in recent years. I hate to hear that, and yet it's something we really do need to reflect upon. Because I think that there are some things, some of them subconscious, which have continued to influence us as a result of the supplement saga. So a couple of things. First of all, as we all know, the players suffered enormously through absolutely no fault of their own. Is it possible that in the years that followed, when they came back, that we perhaps felt guilty about what had happened to them, and as a result went a little bit soft in pushing them for the best possible performance? Don't know. At the same time, rightly or wrongly, we were seen as a bit of an outcast in the AFL community. Is it possible that that caused us to feel as though we didn't have the right to have a loud voice within that community, and that therefore we were perhaps a bit passive in what we said externally? I don't know the answer to either of those two questions, but the one thing I will guarantee you is that if either one of those was correct, has been correct, we will not allow it to be correct going forward. We will be as demanding on our players as every good club needs to be, and we will certainly not be frightened to come out with a loud voice to protect the interests of the Essendon Football Club. So, what is my style and how will it be reflected as president of the club? Well, the first thing I should confess to is that I'm a bad loser. I'm not a bad sport. I'll be gracious in defeat, but I hate losing. And if we have a bad loss, there's a fair chance I'll sulk for a couple of days. My wife tells me that I'm being childish, and she's absolutely right, of course, but I don't apologise for being passionate and incredibly disappointed when we perform below what we are capable of. We've had games this year where that has clearly been the case, and the players and everybody at the club share the disappointment that you all feel. This year has been a perfect storm. There are some valid reasons which have contributed to the performances you have seen, and in some ways I think the reasons that attach to us are more than for most clubs. I'm not going to recite them, but just by way of example, you're always going to find it tough to finish the year by playing St Kilda, Richmond, West Coast, Port Adelaide, Geelong, Hawthorn. That's 6 games, 5 of them against the top 5 sides in the competition in the space of about 27 days, with as many as 12 of your best players missing. Now, I'm sure that people will say that's an excuse. Fair enough. The fact is that we played well in some of those games, but even with those extenuating circumstances, there were others where we let ourselves down. The thing that all of us at the club agree upon is that we're not interested in excuses. We are determined that this team is going to play to its best in every game. The second point about our style and my style going forward is that we will be really clear on accountability and responsibility. It is critical that Ben Rutten and Dan Richardson are empowered to drive the football program, and they will be. Xavier will be involved occasionally when he needs to be. Sean Wellman, who is a terrific member of our board and, as you would all know, a great Essendon Premiership player, is the football director on the board. In that role, Sean will not be involved day to day, hands-on, but he will be regularly involved with the football people, providing input, and he will also lead the discussion around the board table each month when we review the football performance. On that point, there has been a lot of discussion about our game style. I won't attempt to give you chapter and verse on that. Ben will do that far better than I could. What I will say is that we are not interested in having a game style and a playing list that allows us to limp into the finals and then go out in the first week. We're going to be very active in coming weeks and months in going out there and making sure that our playing list gives Ben Rutten the best possible opportunity to be a successful coach of Essendon in finals games. As the coaches work even closer than ever with Adrian Dodoro this time around to identify the talents we need, they will have clear ideas on athletic ability, football skills, etc. Those are a given. But in addition to those things, we want players who hate losing as much or more than we fans do. We want players who are committed to continuing to get better. We want players who will play with passion and who will play for each other and for the club every week. And we want players who will be predictable and consistent from quarter to quarter and from week to week. Those traits will be non-negotiable. When discussing players, I should comment briefly on where things stand at present with Joe Danaher and Adam Sard. Joe and Adam are both terrific people, leaders, and very important to us as a football club. They've been good for us, and we've been good to them over the journey. You're all aware we are talking to both of them about their futures at the club and attempting to demonstrate to them why that future should be with the Essendon Football Club. I think it's absolutely appropriate that each of them should get away from the unnatural environment of the hubs and be able to reflect on this and come to a decision that they are committed to. And that's what they're currently doing. We will be doing everything possible to demonstrate why that decision should be to stay and be a part of a very successful Essendon football team. On a different topic, I spoke earlier about our external communication, the media and elsewhere. Let me be clear on what our approach to our external communications is going to be. Overall, Xavier will continue to be the main spokesman for our club. He will deal with operational issues. Ben and Dan will be primarily those that deal with football issues, occasionally Xavier. But you'll hear from me in two situations. The first of those is where our players or our club are under attack and deserve our support. They will always have that. The second situation where you will hear from me is where there is a major strategic issue that affects this football club and where the interests of the football club need to be promoted. Now, in that context, these next few years are going to be massive in terms of some of the big debates that will be happening within the AFL landscape. I love the game of football. I've got good working relationships with the AFL and I want to continue to see that be the case. But my absolute number one priority will be the interests of the Essendon Football Club and I will be active in promoting those both visibly and within private sessions on behalf of the club. In finishing, just let me thank you for your support during the course of the year, a year the like of which none of us have ever seen before, and let's hope we don't see it again. I've heard the frustration that some of you have expressed. I know everything I have said today is just words, and the only important thing will be the actions that we take next year, and I am committed to those actions. But I can tell you, and some of you might think I'm mad, that I can hardly wait for the start of the 2021 season. Why would I be excited? Well, we've got some fantastic young players coming through this club. McGrath, Ridley, Langford, Parrish, Draper and others are all nowhere near their peaks yet. They're still developing beautifully, and they are going to be absolute great players for the club. We'll keep improving our list with strategic recruiting and drafting. And of course, you've got to remember that will include our captain and a few of our other major players who have really not had a proper go at it during 2020. We have a coach and a coaching staff who have been involved with premiership teams, who know exactly what's required and who are committed to achieving the ultimate success. I'm more confident than I probably was a couple of weeks ago that we will have a good pre-season. We'll have full access to be able to train the players in a way that was just impossible this year, to continue to work on their game style and their individual skills. And finally, and maybe this is the most important, everybody at this club smarts from the way this year has gone. Everybody has hurt from this year and is determined to make sure that we have a much better year in 2021. So, I really hope that you share my view of the exciting future that we have here. If your personal situations allow it, we really need you to sign up and continue to support us in 2021. Somebody said once that football is not a matter of life or death. It's far more important than that. Well, football has been incredibly important this year, but I think the year has demonstrated that there are more important things going on. And I know a lot of you have been affected by that, either in your business lives or your personal lives. It's been a really, really tough year, and we understand that. I hope that you and your families are staying healthy and are coming through all of this as best you possibly can. And I can't wait for the time when we are all back together again at the MCG, watching us smash the Tigers, the Hawks, the Magpies, the Blues in a blockbuster game. Thanks very much for your support, and go Bombers.